Hey everyone, Britta Albert here. If this is your first time here, I'm a spiritual transformational life coach. It's my goal for this channel to help you overcome the obstacles that are standing in the way of you living your best and most authentic life. In today's video, I want to share the roadmap of my life with you. And hopefully this can help you answer some of the questions, whether you are making the right decision for your life or whether you've made the right decision in your past for your life. One of the things that came to my attention that made me want to make this video is this pressure that we put on ourselves to succeed at such a young age, or to have even an inkling of an idea of what we want to do when we grow up. So I always used to envy the kids who knew exactly what they wanted to do, whether they went to college for it or whether they went to a trade school or whether they just self-taught jumped into an industry. And I always wondered what that felt like, to know exactly what you wanted to do or be right out of high school. And I compared myself to them on many occasions, compared myself to where they're at financially, compared myself to where they were at in terms of career. And when you do that, of course, it can be so toxic because it's their journey, right? It's not my journey. But I was one that would jump from job to job, maybe a year here, 6 months there, 2 years here. And I really didn't stay anywhere over 2 years. And I was kind of jumping from place to place. Now I had a lot of things going on in my life at the time, but I still had this feeling like I was failing. Like there was something shameful about the fact that I didn't stay in the same position, that I would go from job to job. I was thinking about this yesterday during my workout, and I really had an appreciation for the way that everything synchronistically worked together to bring me the experience that I needed in order to be who I am today. So I want to share a little bit of that with you guys, just so that in the back of your mind, if you're like me and you're somebody who's jumped from job to job, and you also feel like maybe you're just now finding yourself, or maybe you still haven't found yourself, I want you to understand and acknowledge what a blessing each opportunity has been. Whether you like the job or not, you learn something from it, you gain something from it. Maybe you didn't work your best work ethic, but then you learned from it and you decided to be somebody different. So one of my first jobs was at Hot Topic, believe it or not, and that was retail work. And from that job, I lasted about a month. I remember this vividly. I was at work and I had asked my manager something and she explained it to me. And I didn't quite understand exactly the way that she explained it to me, so I asked her to explain it to me again. And she told me, as a 15-year-old girl, she looked me straight in the eyes and she told me that she'd already explained it to me once and she was not going to explain it to me again, and I was expected to remember it the first time. And I remember I thought I did something wrong. I felt bad. I felt like I had done the wrong thing. This was my first job. I didn't know that that was not okay, or if that was okay. I thought that was normal to be treated that way or spoke to that way. So I didn't even tell my parents about it. I didn't think about it at all. And I remember being in my marketing class in school and something came up about leadership. And I shared with my teacher what my manager had said, and she was very shocked, and she told me that I did not need to be there. So the very next day, I quit my job, and then I started working at a swimsuit store, believe it or not. And it was a specialty store, so it was a much smaller group of customers. Well, I didn't really learn much about the job, but I learned a lot about people. There was a coworker that I had. Now at this time, I had just gotten out of a Christian private school. I had been going there my entire life. My family is very Christian, and I really didn't have much interaction with anybody who wasn't a Christian yet at that time in my life. And one of my coworkers was Wiccan. It was such a specialty store that there was only one person working at a time unless you were being trained by somebody or you were training somebody. So looking back at it now, I'm thinking 15-year-old and 16-year-old kids running a store completely by themselves was a really bad idea. But that was the early 2000s for you. We had a way to communicate with each other, even though there was just one person working per shift. And we had a binder, and inside this binder were folders, and each folder had somebody's name on them. Well, this girl, her name was Crystal, And I remember that one of my coworkers really did not like Crystal. And they did fight like cats and dogs. Crystal did not like my other coworker, and my coworker did not like Crystal. And the other coworker, even though she was a really good friend of mine, she was actually the one that got me the job. She showed me that she had taken out Crystal's name so that she didn't have a folder for people to communicate with her. And she thought that that was funny. Now, don't think too harshly of my friend, because she was 15 and we were not the most mature people. But it taught me about the magic of compassion and kindness. I didn't really care about Crystal, so I'm not the heroine of this story. But I did feel like it was wrong for her to not have a folder. And I'll be quite honest, I was afraid of Crystal because I didn't really know much about Wicca. I was the very stereotypical, grew up in a fundamentalist Christian school. We were taught all kinds of things that were not true at all. And one of them is that Wiccans are devil worshippers and they're witches and they're evil, and regardless if they want to claim being a witch or not, that's totally fine. But the point was that I was kind of scared of her, and I thought that she might be not a good person. But besides that, I still didn't feel like it was right for her to not have a folder in the binder. So I made her a folder and I wrote her a little note because she was next in the shift after me. And I just told her I hope she had a good day. And you guys want to talk about somebody's complete and total transformation? She went from coming in, because the only time we saw each other is when the other person was taking over for your shift and you guys kind of had maybe 5 minutes to finish up your shift, clock out, and they would clock in. Sometimes, since we were all in school, we would bring our books and we would do our schoolwork until our next shift started. So there was a little bit of overlap from time to time. And anytime that Crystal would come in, she would just be really moody. And I don't know if you guys remember the show Daria on MTV way back in the day, but she was very much kind of the Daria attitude, just like this gloomy, angsty teen who the world hated her and she hated the world and she was so misunderstood. But with reason, you guys, with reason, because she was not treated fairly and she was not treated kindly, and I grew to understand that. So just from that little note of me telling her to have a good day, the next day that I came to my shift, I didn't even know if she would notice that I made her a folder. I didn't tell her that I did. I was too afraid to talk to her. The next day of my shift, I had this letter from her, and it was so warm and so heartfelt. And I remember that she told me, "May the gods and goddesses bless me," and how that struck me as so odd, but I appreciated the sentiment. I appreciated what that meant to her and what she was saying to me. Even though I didn't subscribe to the same belief that she had at the time, I still very much appreciated her kindness. Even though we still worked individual shifts, I would write Crystal little notes and just say, "Have a good day, how was your weekend," little things like that. And she would start to bring me little gifts. Nothing big, but I think one day she brought me like a jam that she had made or something like that. And it was so sweet, you guys. It was just, I saw this girl who was in a really dark way. She had just this presence about her that was unwelcoming, and you could tell she was just miserable. And to understand that she was not treated fairly, she was not treated kindly, and she still didn't get along with my other coworker, but her attitude completely changed. Anytime she came in the store and I was there and we were switching shifts, she was talkative, she was welcoming, she was open, she smiled, and it blew my mind. And that was such a simple little thing that I learned not to be afraid of people who intimidate me, because I don't know the level at which they're hurting. And had I never had that job, although the job itself didn't really teach me anything, I would love to tell you I was on time for my shifts, and I was a great employee, but I was 15, 16 years old. I was a crappy employee, but I learned how to have compassion and the magic, the transformational magic of love and compassion from that job. Then after that, I took some time off from working. I focused on my schoolwork, I focused on my friends, I had a boyfriend, and I was just having fun. So I didn't work until I graduated, and then I went into the Army. And there were a lot of things that I learned from the Army, regardless of what my experience was, which is totally for another video. I will tell you the things I gained. I found that my body was physically capable of so much more than I ever thought it was possible. I learned that my body was capable of moving forward when I was past the point of exhaustion. I learned how strong I could be that I never gave myself an opportunity to experience, and I never would have known or acknowledged or recognized had I not been really forced to go to that point within myself. Then after that, I got married and I had my first child, and I started working at a doctor's office, an OBGYN. Well, if you guys have seen my near-death experience video, then you're kind of familiar of what happened at that job. Before getting pregnant with my daughter, before all of that happened, when I was working at the OBGYN, I was on the phone. I was a scheduler. So when you called the doctor's office to schedule your appointment, you get one of 3 schedulers, and I was one of them. And through that, I learned how to communicate effectively, written and spoken, because I would need to let the nurses know sometimes what was going on, and sometimes they would come back and they would be like, I don't understand this, please explain. And I would have to do a better job about communicating short and concise written messages that were going to go back to the doctors or the nurses. And I also had to make sure that I was understanding clearly and communicating clearly and effectively with the patients that were calling our office. So as you can see, things are starting to stack up. I learned my own personal value from my first job. I learned compassion and love from my second job. I learned effective and concise communication from my third job. So after that, I waited tables, and I did that essentially to try to save up money so that when my husband at the time and I split, I would have some sort of a cushion. This was where I started to come into myself. This was out of necessity. Waiting tables, if you've ever worked in the food industry, is not ideal. Some people thrive at it and some people absolutely despise it. I did have some moments that were fun, but it is not for the weak of heart. There are mean people and there are nice people, and there are people who treat you like a slave, and there are people who really appreciate what you do for them. But you're on your feet all the time and you are running constantly, and there's so much more than just waiting tables when you're waiting tables. And if you've done this, you know exactly what I mean. That job taught me how to put on a face. And I don't mean this as a negative thing or a positive thing, it just was. It taught me to be in control of my emotions and to be in control of what other people saw on my face. This was a skill that would be necessary in the working world moving forward. Again, there's no judgment in it, it just is. I'm not saying that it was a good thing or necessarily a bad thing. It was a necessary thing for me and everything that was going on in my personal life. I had to learn how to separate personal and professional life, and that was very necessary, and that skill led me into many other positions down the road. After I left my husband, my kids and I, we moved to Oregon. Now I was a single mom of 2 kids for the first time in my life. And Oregon, especially where I live, the suburbs of Portland, is a heck of a lot more expensive than rural South Carolina. I needed to have at least 2 jobs at every time, if not 3. There was one point where I was juggling 3 jobs. It was a class action lawsuit and bankruptcy claim firm that I somehow was able to get a job at. It was actually one of my most favorite jobs because it was the first time in my life that I really worked hard. I kept my nose down. I didn't really get involved with drama, and I still had fun from time to time, but I really focused on my work, and I didn't even try necessarily to be a good employee. I just was. I loved that job. I loved the freedom that they gave me. As long as I showed up, I did 8 hours. I could show up in my pajamas if I wanted to, because we were not public facing at all. We were just in our cubicles. I could listen to music while I worked if I wanted to. I could eat from my desk while I worked if I wanted to. I could get up and walk around and take breaks really at any point as long as my work got done. I could show up as early as I wanted to and leave earlier than normal. Instead of doing a 9 to 5, I could do a 7 a.m. to 3. As long as my 8 hours were done and as long as my quota was done, they gave me a lot of freedom. And I found that I thrived in that kind of environment. If you tell me exactly what you want done and you give me the freedom to do it within certain realistic and understandable parameters, I thrived. And I had no idea that I was being noticed. But within probably my first month, I got a promotion. And then after that, maybe 2 months later, I got another promotion. After that, they actually created a whole position for me. They called it a hybrid, where I was over the department that I was promoted twice in, and they brought in a second department that they wanted to cross-train me in to be over kind of both of these areas. And I was so honored, and I was so proud of myself to be recognized in this way and to move up in this company this fast. And this company has a reputation for being ruthless. And I don't mean that in a mean way, but they were very strict. And if you did not abide as much freedom as they gave you, if your work did not produce exactly what they asked for to the quality that they asked for, you were gone. And they paid well, and it was very competitive to even get a position there. So I was very happy to be there. And simultaneously, I was still again working in the food industry. I was a cook at Five Guys, just working a night shift. And with that one, I would say what I gathered from that was just more customer service experience. But my main focus, where my heart lied, was that class action and bankruptcy claim firm that I worked with. And it taught me a strong work ethic. I was able to recognize and acknowledge what brought me the recognition and what brought me the promotions. And they were very clear on it as well, so it helped me learn. Then I moved back to South Carolina. Ultimately, I wanted my kids to grow up with their dad in their life. No matter what happened between he and I, he's a good father, and they all deserve to be in each other's lives. So we moved back to South Carolina after 2 years being in Oregon. And I got a job working at DirecTV. I was that annoying person who was in the stores, and I approached you and I tried to sell you DirecTV. You just walked into Costco or Sam's Club or Best Buy or Walmart, and you had no expectation of being sold DirecTV, but there I was, ready to impose my will on you. And there was a lot of rejection in that job. And that job was hard because it was 100% commission. So you could be at a place for 10 hours a day and you could make nothing. Or you could go for 1 hour and you could make $500. It just depended on what you sold and how good you were. And I was not that good. I was very new at it. So one of the best things that I received was twofold. I learned to accept rejection and not take it personally. Okay, that's huge. I also learned to work with the people who are surrounding me and to network. And what I mean by this is when I was stationed in Best Buy, I worked with the Best Buy employees. I would bring them customers, or I would answer questions for the customers to very basic knowledge that I had, and then I said, let me go grab an associate for you. And I would start sales and then hand them off to the employees. So sometimes all the employee had to do was go grab the product. Now, did that help me? No. Did that bring money in my pocket? Absolutely not. Did that person sign up for DirecTV? Sometimes. But what it did is those associates remembered that I brought them customers and I asked nothing in return. I would just bebop, here you go, here's this person, run away and go find somebody else. Here's another person for you, run away and find somebody else. They remembered that, so especially in the home theater department where the TVs are, as they're talking to their customers, they started asking their customers, who do you have for your television provider? Who do you have for your internet provider? Okay, well, let me get you to talk to this DirecTV girl, and she can show you some packages that are going to work really well on this beautiful new TV that you're buying today. And so it became a very beautiful relationship of networking and helping each other that I learned out of necessity of being in these stores and in these places. The second thing that did is it again got the attention of the management that worked in that specific Best Buy. Now, rules have changed because of me, but at that time, it was not against rules to recruit, we shall say. It is now, but back then it was not. And so I started talking with the managers, and they started to take notice of what I was doing and how I was helping them boost their sales and how I was working with this team that wasn't really even my team, but I was on board for their brand and for their business, and I was helping them. So I was able to negotiate then, again, going back to my very first job of knowing my value, I was able to negotiate with them a decent pay to come on board. That day I went to my office and I quit. I went straight up to Best Buy, I got their application, I filled it out, and then I even went and took the drug test that same day so that I had everything. I only had to wait just a couple of days and I was able to start almost immediately. What Best Buy did, if you have worked for Best Buy, there's a reason why people who work for Best Buy have probably one of the highest success rates of getting hired at many other companies. And it's because of their customer service. I learned customer service on a level I didn't even fathom existed. And what does customer service do? What does sales really do? It makes you observant, and it makes you listen, and it helps you identify who this person is. And a good salesperson isn't going to be so much about how much stuff can I give you. A really good salesperson is going to say, how can I serve you and make sure that you have the best experience possible so that the next time that you are going to be in the market to buy something, or if you have friends and family, you're going to send them my way because you're going to remember how it felt to work with me, and everything that you have in your home is going to live up to the expectations or exceed the expectations of your experience. That is what a truly good salesperson does. And that is a skill that I learned. It showed me how I could have a relationship with total strangers and how to build rapport with total strangers in just a small amount of time. It taught me how to be observant. It deepened that compassion, and it helped me to understand deeper, just like that second job that I had working at the swimsuit store, to understand that the way that you see people, how they present themselves to you, the common terminology is don't judge a book by its cover. I will tell you that I saw very prominent people who are very wealthy steal things. And I also saw somebody come in literally with dirty overalls and no shirt on underneath who spent thousands in cash. You just don't know. And you have to treat, the way that I looked at it is that I treated everybody, no matter if they were young or old, it didn't matter, no matter what they were wearing, no matter what they looked like, as long as they were a kind individual, I would treat them all like royalty. Because I wanted to serve them and I recognized the divine in them, even though I didn't really realize that's what I was doing. That got me noticed. And again came more promotions. And again, I found myself in a leadership position. And from there, I was able to step into the last job that I just had, which was being the general manager of a gym. And I have never been so humbled in my life than being the general manager of a gym. If you want to talk about compassion, it is absolutely not about, at least for me, signing people up and getting the membership sales. I saw people transform their lives. I saw people recover from addiction on multiple occasions. I saw women who were in physically abusive marriages find their strength and leave. I saw men do the same thing. I saw people not just transforming their bodies, but transforming who they were, how they thought about themselves, and how they interacted with each other. And in that job, my door was almost always open, and people would come and they would talk to me. They're already members. I have nothing more to sell them. Most of them were already even working with a trainer. I literally had nothing more to sell them. So it wasn't about what I could get from them, and they knew that. And they would come and we would just talk. Some of them had lost their spouses. Some of them had mental health issues. Every single person that walked through that door, didn't matter how much money they had, again, young or old, or the color of their skin, or their sexual orientation, or their religious beliefs, it didn't matter. Every person that walked through that door of my club was absolutely the same as the person before and after them. And people felt that. And it was through that job that I realized what I'd been doing my whole life, what I'd been working towards my whole life, becoming a spiritual life coach. And if it was not for that job and my experience at that job, I would have never had the challenge I had to overcome, which opened my eyes and helped me see myself and what I was capable of. And I would never have had the courage to leave had it not been for the situations of this pandemic, which made that club close its doors. And now I am doing what my life purpose is. And now I am standing in front of you, speaking to you as a licensed, certified life coach. So before you beat yourself up, or before you look at somebody else even and think that you're supposed to have it all together, I want you to trace your life path. Trace all the jobs that you've had, trace the situations that you've been in, and acknowledge how amazing you are for being where you're at right now and everything that is to come that you don't even know about yet. That is all going to bring you to your life purpose, your soul purpose, so that you can one day stand and say, all of this was to bring me right here so I can serve you right now. I love you guys so much. I hope that this video was inspirational. If it meant something to you or if you got something out of it, please give it a thumbs up. And again, if there's somebody who you think of that needs to hear this message, please share this video with them and continue to help us grow this community. You guys are amazing. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see you next time.